by heart?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then there's probably no reason to do this whole session. But I'm going to do it very quickly, and this is a little program which we developed, which is called the Changing Map of Israel. And we're going to talk about the borders and boundaries of the state of Israel. And I just need you to be a little patient with me for 2 or 3 minutes. Benny, you're my northern light. North. Benny's north. Okay. What is he doing? What could he possibly be doing? I've done it once or twice.
Couldn't do that on one.
I'm gonna try it now, though. I get home on the road.
This is actually a pretty size model of New Jersey.
Charades on the floor.
It sunk if you're in the
Bless you.
Bless you.
Over the church, yeah, it was cute.
Good man hat.
Make it
Okay.
That is first time.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so here we are. Everybody familiar?
Yes.
Okay, this is going to be a very interactive piece. Volunteer number 1.
Yeah!
Please come to Israel. Stand in Israel. Volunteer number 2.
Okay.
Please stand in the Mediterranean Sea. If you don't need help, you can do hot and cold. Perfect. Volunteer number 3. Kip to Lebanon. Kip to Lebanon, please. If you need help, the studio audience is here. You got it. Volunteer number 4. What's your name? Megan. Megan, can you please go to Egypt?
Nope.
Come on. And volunteer number 5? Duke. Red Sea. Red Sea, just like Moses. Just like Moses. Volunteer. Your name is?
Jason.
Jason to Saudi Arabia, please. Saudi Arabia. Take one baby step back. You're perfect. Excellent. Your name?
Ryan.
Ryan to Jordan. Ryan to Jordan, which means don't move. Perfect.
Syria. Syria.
What's your name? Pete. Pete, can you please come to Syria? No.
You're my neighbor.
Pete to Syria. And Teresa. Teresa, can you please join us in the Gaza Strip? Excellent. And Ray, can you join us in the Dead Sea? The Dead Sea? For Ray, let's see. How are we looking here? Okay. Okay. Quick round robin. Your name? Sorry, one more person.
Melody.
Melody? Yes. Melody, can you please get as close as you can to Iraq?
I have no idea.
That's
I
right
guess I
there.
said we-
Right there, right over there. Okay, you're just over there. Perfect. Okay, so quick round robin, your name and where you're standing. My name is Joe, and I'm standing in the Negev Desert.
Jason, Syria.
No.
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Look in the Red Sea, just like which biblical hero? Moses, thank you.
Megan,
Egypt, excellent. Teresa's in the Gaza Strip.
Becky, Mediterranean.
Becky's in the Med.
Leah's in Israel.
Israel.
Ray, the Dead Sea.
Dead Sea.
Ryan and Jordan.
Jordan.
Melody in Iraq.
You're close to Iraq.
Close, yes, I can't get
Okay.
past the wall.
How far is Iraq from Israel? 400 miles. Boston, Washington, D.C. That's the distance. Boston, Washington, D.C., Iraq. You got it. Again?
Ryan, Jordan.
Jordan.
Syria.
Syria.
Kip from Lebanon.
Kip from Lebanon. Is that everybody?
Yes.
Okay. This is the Middle East. This is not just about Israel. If you're standing, those of you who are standing, in a place.
Oh. Joe?
Is that my fault?
Danny's bringing Ash.
Let's be on the
Joe
timer.
the electrician.
All right.
Flashlight's on.
All right.
Wave like you just don't care.
Okay, if you're standing, this is a serious This is serious, as you can tell from the lights. If you're standing in a place that was a sovereign country, 100 years ago, remain standing, if not, go back to your seat. So wait a minute, your name is?
Lee.
Lee? Lee is in Israel. Israel gets independence in 1948, 67, 68 years ago, so you should sit down. Everybody else, think about it a second. If you're standing in a body of water, if you're touching any country on the map that was sovereign 100 years ago, you should remain standing, otherwise sit down. It's a tough one. Think about it. You can get help from the studio audience. You can ask around, but let's make it happen. All right. Okay. So what just happened? Nobody's moving, I see, which is very interesting because Jordan, Ryan and Jordan became an independent state in 1946. So Ryan, you should sit down. Iraq becomes a republic in 1936, so you should sit down. Syria becomes an independent state in 1944, so you should sit down. Lebanon becomes a state in 1946, so you should sit down. Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud didn't even exist 100 years ago. 100 years ago it was called Hejaz, which was the Arabian Peninsula, so you should sit down. Mediterranean Sea, you're touching Saudi Arabia, they weren't there. Jordan wasn't there. Israel wasn't there. What about Egypt? What about Egypt? I heard a lot of. I heard you were sure about Egypt. And I usually know most of us are because when we think of Egypt, what's your name?
Megan.
Megan. We think of Cleopatra.
Yes.
We think of Elizabeth Taylor, Charlton Heston. And of course, we think of that because Egypt has been around forever. But it only became an independent state in 1952. Until 1952 it was a British protectorate. So you should sit down, and you should sit down. And folks, what just happened?
Everybody has independence around the state.
We're all being independent for 100 years, 70 years, 80 years. The Middle East 100 years ago was a geopolitical void. And regardless of your political opinion, whether you're on the left of the political spectrum or the right of the political spectrum, it doesn't matter. The facts are that the Middle East is a creation geopolitically of the last 100 years. And that's important to remember. I want to go back a little bit further than 100 years ago. Can I ask?
Jason.
Jason, come with me. Jason, we're up here. Right up here. So here we are. Now you're really so here we have actually the Syrian-Iraqi border, and your name for the next 20 seconds is going to be Abraham. Okay. And you're talking to
Yahweh.
Yahweh, Adonai. And you're getting instructed to lead the people out of the belief in idol worshiping, and you're going to bring them into the place where you're going to believe in one God, the great God over us all. Come on down. And he comes down, and he stops here in Beersheba, and then he stops over here in Gerar. I lived for 20 years in the kibbutz in the southwest Negev, where you're standing now, in a place called Gerar. And the 20 years I lived in Gerar, I never knew what it was. Nobody ever bothered to tell me until I went to university and studied a little bit. And Gerar, of course, is mentioned 4 times in the book of Genesis as the place where Abraham and his son Isaac dig wells. So you're now there, and you've come down to here, and then you walk over here to Beersheba, and then you walk up here to Hebron, not far from Bethlehem, And that's where you die at the age of 176 or 177. Pretty good life. I wish all of us can live that long. So Abraham, that's the role. That's fantastic. Have a seat. Can I have another volunteer? Which name?
Megan.
Megan. A lot of Megans here. Megan, come over here. Megan, you are now going to be the next leader that we're going to talk about in the Bible. We can talk about a lot of Bible, a lot of biblical people. We can talk about Deborah, the prophetess judge. We can talk about Ruth. We can talk about a lot of Joshua. But now we're going to talk about the next big leader, which is Moses. And you're going to be Moses for 1 minute. Don't move. Don't move. You too, in the Negev, are speaking to. And what are you instructed to do? To lead the children of Israel out of
Egypt.
which is slavery, and bring them to the promised land. Freedom. How hard was that?
Pretty difficult.
So here you are, the children of Israel are following you out. We crossed the Red Sea, which is actually here. A lot of people, we know this is the Red Sea, but of course we're talking about the Red Sea between Africa and the Middle East. So we're over here, and what are you doing to get to the Red Sea? Little action, okay? We cross, and we come here. You climb up to the top of Mount Sinai, where God gives you the 10 Commandments, and you're holding them, okay? And we're following Megan or Moses, and we're following you down this way, and we're walking, and it's supposed to take how many days? It's supposed to take 40 days. But of course, you came down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments, and the people weren't behaving so well. They were behaving badly, and you, of course, got upset. You had to go back up to the top. You had to talk to again. You come down, and then it ends up taking this poor Moses 40 years to get to the promised land. Walking in the desert for 40 years until you arrive here. You ready? It's a long walk. We get here, and now you're standing atop Mount. Think about it a second. Mount? No, that's Sinai. Sinai is down here. Mount? Come on. Nebo, Mount Nebo, of course, and you get to the top of Mount Nebo, and you're standing here, and the children of Israel are all behind you, Megan, and they're about to enter, and in God's eternal wisdom, turns to you and says, sorry, Mo, you can't go. And poor Moses, after 40 years of putting up with this very difficult people called the Jewish people, after 40 years, Moses dies atop Mount Nebo, and we today don't even know where he's buried. Don't not so fast. We don't even know where he's buried yet. We know where Abraham's buried. Where's Abraham buried? In the tomb of the patriarch. The tomb of the patriarch is in what city? Just south of Jerusalem, in Hebron. The tomb of the patriarchs is in Hebron. The matriarchs and the patriarchs were all buried in that area. Moses, who came a few generations later, we don't even know where Moses is buried. So what is that all about? What do you think? Why do you think it is that in God's great wisdom doesn't allow poor Megan Moses to enter the land? What is that all about? Why not let him in? Did he do a bad job? Was he, sorry?
Did he kill the Egyptian slave?
Oh my gosh, there you go. In Hebrew we say Shivim Panim LeTorah, which means 70 faces to the Torah. For every story in the Tanakh, in our Bible, we have at least 70 interpretations. And that's certainly one of them. Perhaps God doesn't want the leader of our nation to have blood on his hands. And he killed the Egyptian slave driver when he was beating a Hebrew slave. Great, let's think of some more.
Joshua had blood on his hands.
Joshua had blood on his hands as well. Interesting. So maybe that's not the reason. What else do you think? More reasons.
Anger
over breaking the tablets. Maybe he doesn't want to put up with this nonsense of this Moses code breaks the tablets. Great reason. Let's think of 2 or 3 more.
He struck the rock instead of speaking to us.
God said to Moses, whatever you do, I'm quoting God, whatever you do, don't hit the rock to get the water. You want to sing Joni Mitchell tunes to the rock, you can. You want to dance with the rock, you can. You want to sing poetry to the rock, you can. Don't hit the rock with the stick. What does he do? He hits the rock with the stick. And of course, Moses immediately comes out as part of the Hebrew Jewish people as being that person who does exactly what Yisrael means. You want to know what the word Yisrael means, Israel? Yisrael means he who wrestles with God. Even Moses, pious old Moses, doesn't accept anything as being just a word. Everything has to be an argument. And we argue with God over everything. We're struggling. We're in this eternal struggle, asking questions, debating, negotiating, and coming up with all sorts of other answers because we're wise guys. And that's what we do with Moses. And poor Moses dies here. Now you can sit down. Thank you very much to Moses. Okay. I'll need that tape. Can you hold this one out? Thank you. Okay, so what do you think this is about? Why does this Israeli guy, this 60-year-old Israeli man in 2015, why do I talk about Moses and Abraham? I want to talk to you about the politics of the Middle East. I want to convince you of Israel's right to this land, which I'll do in a second. I'll try to. But I'll try to convince, although I think you guys are pretty convinced. From what I hear, you folks are pretty convinced. But if you weren't convinced, I want to give you the arguments. And I want to help you along with that if I can a little bit with my little bit of knowledge to see if I can help you. But what exactly is that all about? Why do I go back to Moses and Abraham? Why do I do that?
Lineage.
Why bother?
Lineage.
Lineage, exactly. When I, Joe, got up in Philadelphia in 1968, and I said to my parents, I was 13 years old, I said, I want to go live in Israel. My parents said, why? I said, because Israel is the land of my ancestors. Because my right to live in Israel is inalienable. This is not something which I decided one day because I went to a college here or a college there. I decided because it's my country. It's the land where Abraham, Moses, the prophets, and many generations after connected to the land. And when I sit on the land of Israel here with you, and I touch the land of Israel, I'm touching the connection of my people to this land. And that's what it's about. That's what it's about for me. And I'm not a religious fellow. And it's still about that, even though I'm not a religious fellow. Nobody in my Jewish world who knows me would call Joe Perlov a religious guy. But that's the connection I feel. And that connection with the sand, the earth of Israel, is what the story of the connection of the Jewish people to this land is all about. Let's skip 2,500 years. The Jewish people are banished from this land and they come back. They're banished from the land and they come back. And they come back and they get banished again. And this goes on a number of times. And they're not only banished from this land. Where else are they banished from? Where else are the Jews thrown out of? Europe, England, York, England. Where else? In Europe, there was a slaughter of thousands and thousands of Jews. Where else are Jews banished from?
Poland.
Sorry? Poland, of course. 6 million Jews are murdered, 3 million of them actually in Poland, on Polish land. What else? Where else did Jews banish from? The Spanish Inquisition, the Spanish, out of Spain, 1492. The Jews were evicted from Spain. And the Jews are evicted from this land many times over, and they come back here where they create new diasporas, areas where the Jews are dispersed in. In 1890, Theodor Herzl, you know him?
No.
Theodor Herzl, anybody ever heard of him?
I've heard of it.
He is the head of the modern Zionist political movement. In 1890, Theodor Herzl coins the term Zionism. And he says all of the Jews should be allowed to come back and have their own place where they can be in charge. Or as I like to tell people sometimes with a little bit of sarcasm, Jews should have the right to elect really bad leaders. Okay? Because you're not alone. We all want to elect bad leaders. And Israelis also want to have the right to elect the leaders who we think should be our leaders. Sometimes we elect great leaders, sometimes we elect weak leaders, and it's all a question of political perspective and political opinion. A lot of people in Israel think Bibi Netanyahu is the greatest thing since chopped liver. And a lot of people in Israel think Bibi Netanyahu is a terrible prime minister. And of course, I've heard from friends that in America, some people don't think Obama is the greatest president. And I heard that there are some people who didn't think Mr. Bush Jr. or Mr. Bush Sr. were the greatest presidents. In other words, in a pluralistic, open society, it's a good thing that we have many, many opinions. Or as I like to say about the Jewish people, one people, many, many, many opinions. And that's certainly the way it is in Israel. We say that in Israel, for every 2 Israelis, there are at least 4 political opinions on every topic. So you have 8 million people in Israel, we got 16, if not 32 million opinions on every topic. And everybody here is an expert. Benny's an expert, I'm an expert, you'll all be experts when you go home. We're all going to be experts. But in 1890, Theodor Herzl says the Jewish people have to have a country they can call their own. And in 1890, he establishes the modern movement of Zionism, which is about the right of the Jewish people to connect to the land of Israel. He actually said, he wasn't a very religious fellow either, he was secular, but he talked about the metaphysical connection, which is really religious. The metaphysical connection between us and this piece of land. And in 1890, Theodor Herzl is witness to something which excites him and says, I need to create a different possibility for the Jews. What is that happens? 1890? Dreyfus Affair. Anybody ever heard of the Dreyfus Affair? Alfred Dreyfus is a Jewish captain in the French army. He is accused in an anti-Semitic moment of being a traitor to the French Republic. And he's sent to Devil's Island to live out the rest of his life. The Jewish people understand immediately that this is a blood libel, and that Theodor Herzl is being accused of being a traitor because he is Jewish. And he's banished to Devil's Island. After 2 or 3 years, 2.5 years, through a letter from Emile Zola called I Accuse, Theodor Herzl comes back to France. And Alfred Dreyfus comes back to France, and he is, what's the word? He's repatriated, and he's found not guilty. But Herzl, of course, sees this happening, and that's where Herzl understands that only when the Jews are free to make decisions for the Jews in their own country, only then will it be okay. And of course, Theodor Herzl creates the first Zionist Congress, and Jews all over the world start to talk about coming back to this land. World War I comes about. Who wins World War I? The good guys. The good guys. I've done this with groups sometimes in Russia. And after I say that, I say, oops, because sometimes there are good people in the room who happen to live on the wrong side. But in 1917, after World War I, the British are now in charge. And the British are in charge of this whole area that they took from who? From the Ottomans, from the Turks. And this whole piece of land is in Israel. It's going to be the new Jewish country. And on the 2nd of November, 1917, Theodor Herzl and Lord Balfour actually comes out with the Balfour Declaration. Has anybody ever heard of the Balfour Declaration? Yeah. Do you know it by heart?
No.
His Majesty's government views with favor the establishment of a national Jewish home in the historic land of the Jewish people, the land of Israel. So long as they don't discriminate against other people that live here, Muslims and Christians. That's what the Balfour Declaration says. The Jews are onto a party time. This is a time when the Jews finally say, after 2,000 years of living expelled from our land, we can now come back because the greatest power in the world, the British government, have politically recognized the right of the Jewish people to a country of their own. This is a very important moment, folks. And in 1917, on the 2nd of November, that is the establishment of Israel, of the modern idea of Israel. And that piece of land is about the size of my second favorite state, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is about the size of Jordan and Israel together. And Jordan, which is 2.5 times the size of Israel, and Israel together make up an area the size of Pennsylvania. Whereas the state of Israel makes up an area the size of my first favorite state,
Delaware.
New Jersey. New Jersey. Who doesn't have New Jersey as a favorite state? So, in 1922, 5 years after the Balfour Declaration recognized the Jewish right to this land, there's a fellow named Abdullah. Abdullah is a nomadic Bedouin who lives in the Arabian Peninsula, down here. And he's traveling up to the north to fight against the French in Beirut. Churchill, the head of the empire, stops him in his feet through Lawrence of Arabia, and he says to this fellow Abdullah, when he's about here, hey Abdullah, you can be Abdullah for a second. How would you like to be the king? Sure. That's exactly what Abdullah said. Abdullah, who has no connection to this land, he is an Arabian Peninsula person, he's a nomadic Bedouin, he's a Hashemite, he's not a Jordanian. In 1922, he becomes the king of this whole piece of land here. And his great-grandson, whose name is Abdullah, is the king of that land today, 4 generations later. And that may give you some clue as to why the Palestinian people don't love the Jordanian government. Because the Jordanian government is actually Arabian Peninsula dwellers who have the control of this land without being indigenous to the land. Okay. So in 1922, Winston Churchill does the following. He takes this piece of land and he takes 66% of it, more than 2/3, and he gives it to Abdullah. And that piece of land becomes the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. And the Jews are left with a piece of land the size of New Jersey. Has anybody here ever been to New Jersey?
Yeah.
Thank God. Okay, so if you've been to New Jersey, you know that if you enter the New Jersey Turnpike in Ramapo and you drive south to the Delaware Memorial Bridges, which enter into Wilmington, Delaware, that is mile for mile the length of Israel. So now you have a good idea of the size. So in 1923, Israel is left with this piece of land, and Winston Churchill, in his autobiography, says the following. With the flick of my pen, I gave away 2/3 of what we promised to the Jews 5 years earlier. And the Jews are now left with this piece of land, which is 1/3 the size of what they originally were left with. No longer the greater land of Israel, according to the Bible, now it's a small little country. But that's not the end. Along comes Holocaust, World War II. World War II, for every 3 Jews in the world in 1935, in 1946, only 2 remain. 1/3 of the world Jewish population is annihilated in World War II. And as a result, on the 29th of November, 1947, the United Nations makes a decision to take this piece of land and give it to the Jews? It'd be too easy. This piece of land and divide it up into 2 states. A Jewish state and a interesting. Think about it. A Jewish state and a Arab state. Say something which might be deemed a little bit controversial, and it's before dinner, so we don't want to be too controversial. The word Palestinian, in terms of national identity, folks.
You have freedom.
Well,
You have freedom.
yeah, but the word Palestinian becomes a national identity in the 1940s and 50s. 60 years ago, there was no Palestinian national identity. It doesn't mean the Palestinians don't exist today. Newt Gingrich said the Palestinian identity doesn't exist. I disagree with Mr. Gingrich. I think the identity exists, but it exists very differently than a normal people's identity. And I would go on to tell you that that identity is actually, in my personal view, the result of the Zionist movement. Because the Palestinian people who are living here, who had no national aspirations, they see the Jews building this fantastic country, making the desert bloom, turning it into a country where people can live in a democracy, where people are free, where people can argue and people can debate and people can outspeak their minds. Anybody here familiar with my favorite rock and roll group, Pink Floyd? So I have had many, many discussions over recent years, Betty has watched me have them, with Roger Waters of Pink Floyd. Because I've said to him a dozen times, why are you trying to force a boycott against Israel? You can come to Tel Aviv, stand up on the stage, say anything you want, and half of the Israelis in the room will probably agree with you. And then you can go home, and half the people will be upset, half the people will be happy, but everybody will have enjoyed this thing to the dark side of the moon. And it's a fantastic thing, but unfortunately Mr. Waters doesn't agree. So, like many others who boycott Israel. But in this piece of land now, which is really a democratic place for people to live together, this is exactly what the idea was of establishing a state. And I want to show you what that state looked like. Can I have 3 men? 1, 2, 3. 3 men. Okay? Come on. The Jewish state. Can you stand here? And for the Jewish state, can you stand here, up in there? And the Jewish state, can you stand down here? Folks, this is the partition plan, the Jewish state. The Arab state, 1, 2, 3, women, come on. The Arab state, can you put 1 foot here, 1 foot south of there? Excellent, and one over, right up here. There you go, and last but not least, right up here. Right there. Okay, the women represent the Arab state. The Jews represent the Jewish state. This is the partition plan. Does it make sense? No. It gets more complicated. Can I have you for 1 sec? Sorry. Here, there you go. So stand up here. International City of Jerusalem. Inside. Get on the X. International City of Jerusalem. And last but not least, remind me? Lee, come on in here. Can you get right in there? There you go. And there's the Muslim conclave of Jerusalem, of Tel Aviv, Jaffa in Tel Aviv. Complicated. Jewish state, raise your hands. That would be the men. The three men. Jewish state, raise your hands. Excellent. Jerusalem International City, that's you. Arab state, raise your hands.
Women.
Conclave of Jaffa, raise your hand. Isn't this a great plan? What do you think? 2 states for 2 people. That's what the plan was. What did the Jews say to the 2-state solution plan? We'll accept it. We'll accept it. What does the Arab world say?
No.
Under no condition. And so breaks out Israel's War of Independence. Everybody have a seat? Thank you very much. Okay, we have 10 more minutes to cover a few more years. Here we go. The War of Independence breaks out. Now remember the situation, folks. 6 million Jews, a third of the world population of the Jewish people, has just been annihilated in the most abominable manner. Nobody in the world, people still can't believe it. I just saw a show on the History Channel the other night about the British and American soldiers who were in Auschwitz 70 years ago, and they couldn't believe it. What, is it possible that the German people annihilated 6 million people because of their religion? It's unbelievable. And at the end of that war, those people who came to Israel have to now enter into a war for survival here. At the end of that war, the borders of Israel look like this. Jerusalem, the international city, becomes a divided city, half to the Jews, half to the Arabs. The Gaza Strip is created. Who takes over this piece of land, what is this piece of land called?
West Bank.
The West Bank. Why is it called the West Bank?
That's on the western border.
It's the western bank of the Jordan River.
By the Jordan River.
So the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, this is the piece of land that Moses is looking down upon. Moses is not looking down at the ski club in the Golan Heights. And he's not looking down at the yacht club or the scuba diving club in the Red Sea. Or he's not looking down at the beautiful towers in Tel Aviv, which didn't exist. He's looking down at the epicenter of Jewish history, which is Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. It doesn't matter whether you're an Israeli or an American, left-winger who thinks we should give territories back. It's still part of the Jewish heritage. And even if we end up losing pieces of it, because to live in peace, sometimes people have to make very difficult decisions. My government, the last 6 governments of the State of Israel have suggested, the last 6 governments, as difficult as they can be, they have suggested that we have a 2-state solution. My Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, has said time and time again, 2 states for 2 people. And it's important to recognize that. So, this is the final map. This new map is a tiny map. It is a country which is 10 miles wide, near Tel Aviv. 10 miles. I'll give you, I was a tour guide in the 90s, and I was traveling with a group of children from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Now, I don't know how many Jewish friends you may have, hopefully lots, and if you do, you may know that on every bus from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, you're bound to have at least one kid named Josh Katz. On every bus. There's always a Josh Katz. So I had a Josh Katz on my bus, this was in 95 or 96, and I was traveling with them up in the north. And I was standing here, it was before I had a mobile phone. I had a beeper. And I got a beep from New Jersey, Mrs. Katz. And she said, please call, it's urgent. So I found a public phone, I called Mrs. Katz and I said, Mrs. Katz, what happened? Josh is fine. She said, Joe, I'm so worried. I understand you guys are in Tiberias, which is in the Galilee. And I understand that the Hezbollah terrorists are bombing the Galilee. I said, Mrs. Katz, worry you not. That's 10 miles from here. Today, it sounds ridiculous today, but when it took place, and I honestly, I remember thinking to myself, was that a thump I just heard? Did you just fall on the floor? Did this woman just faint? Because I realized that what she did get her composure back. She said, Joe, I drive Josh more than 10 miles to school every day. And you're telling me that the rockets can only reach this far and Josh is here? And I should feel safe and okay? And that's probably an important piece to remind all of us here that the distances in the Holy Land, the distances in Israel are nothing. 10 miles wide, that's all we have here. If we give up the West Bank, which perhaps we will, it could happen. Our Prime Minister, he said he's going to do it. And if we give up the West Bank, it means that the borders of our country will be 10 miles wide. 10 miles wide are hard borders to defend. Golda Meir, Prime Minister of Israel, when I came here in 1968, Golda Meir in 1968, when I came here as a 14-year-old boy, or 69, she used to call this, she said, giving up these borders, God forbid, would be Auschwitz borders. In other words, they'd be indefensible. We could never defend them. And it's a complicated moment. I don't know if Golda was right. I didn't always agree with Golda Meir. You may be surprised to hear that Israelis don't all agree with each other. But I didn't always agree with Golda Meir. Anyway, just to finish up a personal angle and to share with you one more sentence about this. In 1969, I came to Israel. I was 15 years old or 16. I said to my dad in Philadelphia, Pop, I really want to go live in Israel. And my dad said, you know, Joseph, you're only 16. I said, I'll be okay. We'll go to high school, I'll go to the army, it'll be fine. And my father, I could see him doing this in 1969. This was August of 69. Anybody remember August of 69? You're all too young. Anybody remember August of 69? Maybe one or two of us. What major event happened in August of 69? And I could see my dad doing it in his mind. He was going like this: Israel, Woodstock. Israel, Woodstock. And my dad thought that this would probably be a better place for me to be. So he let me come. And in 1969 I came, and I settled here in a place not far from the beach near Ashdod. And I came to live in Israel. And I've been here since 45 or 46 years, and I've lived in Israel. And over recent years, I've had the opportunity to work with these fantastic groups who come from abroad, who seem to love Israel more than life itself. And I was looking forward to this evening to spend a few minutes with you, and thank you for coming to Israel, and thanking you for being so supportive, and to wish you all God bless and thank you.
Thank you.